I wanted to take a little time to answer that question. You know, is creativity important, and how do we define that? And when I say to my parents that I wanted to be a designer, they went, "Oh, that's great, that's lovely. You know, what is it exactly that you do?" And I used to say, "Look, I work on that little 1 millimetre between the internet and what you see on screen," and they didn't really get that. And I used to say, "I work on that thin layer of ink between the paper and what you're reading," and they thought I was a printer. So it was really hard to validate what I did because people didn't really understand. And I think that's still a problem today, but in business. And so the repercussions are even greater. You know, there's a lot of motherhood statements around creativity and design. You know, Adobe's mission statement is change the world through digital experiences. You know, creative storytelling. Storytelling is very big at the moment. We also use make experience your business, and these sound wonderful, but you know, what precisely do they mean? You know, I'm of an age when I first heard about design, the job was called commercial artist. The job description was in the title, okay? You did art for commerce, and that was it, okay? There was a direct one-to-one link to an outcome. And these days, when we're working with large brands and we believe we're working for the customer of large brands are the shareholders, not the users. So there's this separation between that, and John Mader can't do a design presentation without referencing John Mader. At South by Southwest at the beginning of last year, he does a yearly statement on the update of the internet and design and so on. And he actually says last year that I realised, this is John Mader talking, I realised that the advocacy of design-led systems was really important, but in reality, design is not that important. And he split design into these three areas. Classic design, which he referred to as being driven by the Industrial Revolution, and as someone who calls himself a classic designer, I find that highly offensive when I fire up my steam-powered Mac Plus, John, but don't worry about that. We're currently in design thinking, which is a way to codify the design process and apply it to other systems, and moving into computational design. And that is where you design something knowing that the delivery of it will be through a system mostly driven by artificial intelligence. And I want to frame my presentation on that. On the other hand, Don Norman, if you're going to reference John Mader, you've also got to reference Don Norman. Don Norman last month, when I was building this deck in Fast Company, took issue with this and said that designers and creatives need to tackle major social issues. But to do that, we need to work with engineers and scientists and business people, ethicists, planners, developers, and politicians. So we've got these two people competing with what does design and creativity mean. And you know, maybe just design is good ergonomics. Maybe we can change the world just through ease of use. You know, if everything was easier to use, maybe society would be better. So let me expand on that argument. How to start? You know, there are examples of this. We've been working with the Centre for Inclusive Design, and one of the best ways to improve your commercial return for design is simply to expand your market, to design for the edge cases. And I'll come back to this later. But the Centre for Inclusive Design has great research that commercial outcome is a valid driver of designing for all. And there's 4 examples here. One, of course, is Netflix. A UK study just showed that the subtitles, 80% of people who use subtitles have got nothing to do with deaf or hardness of hearing. You know, everyone turns the subtitles on, and that design system was brought into video streaming. The toothbrush, the electric toothbrush, was originally designed to solve the problem for motor impaired people and small children. Now everyone uses them. Dropped curbs. I remember years ago, it was the year of the disabled, which is a horrible term, the year of the disabled, and of course everyone had to have dropped curbs for wheelchairs. Originally, the design was for wheelchairs. And of course, now it makes so much sense. You think, well, why wouldn't you have that when you're trundling through town with your carry-on luggage or you're a mother with a pram? You know, it just works so much better. And the fourth one, the Coles Quiet Hour, which is designed for people on the autism spectrum, so that the lights are slightly dimmer and there's no music, and it's inclusive design for that market. And everyone goes, I don't know about you, but I seek out Coles when their quiet hour is on, because, you know, where I can buy my electric toothbrush so I can brush my teeth while watching Netflix streaming, tying that all together. But these are examples where design does change society, and there's an enormous potential for inclusive design to do that. The trouble is, in digital design, we plummet from the creativity into production so rapidly, driven by design systems. Again, let me explain what I mean. This is streaming service I use, Netflix. And it's driven by a back-end system. It's driven in order to give you more of what you want, based on the data that's pulling through you. And so that paradigm, that personalisation requirement, has meant that every other streaming system looks more or less exactly like Netflix. And the branding on that and the creative experience of that is constrained by that back-end technology. And we're seeing this more and more, particularly where we at Adobe sit, because we have both front-end and back-end. And that back-end technology aids production, but at the expense of creativity. So these are digital experiences that people are now being creative within. And you can see that the level of expression that you're able to do is dropping, because there's this massive desire for data to drive personalisation so that you get what we think you want, but within the constraints of that back-end system. So these are two beauty websites. Apart from the fact you've got a big L'Oreal there, it's pretty hard to tell the difference between the two. These are 4 fashion websites. You know, structurally, they're more or less the same. So some research that Nielsen, the ratings company, Nielsen Catalina did something. And every year they look at advertising campaigns and the creative elements that go into them. And last year, the research came back that despite all the targeting and all the data that campaigns build around, when they asked the end users, the people who saw these campaigns, what attracted them and what made engage them, 47% was the creativity, the interest, the idea. We've just seen this in action yesterday with, you know, the Super Bowl. You know, everyone wants that big creative idea first. And so there's some data there that we know that the creative is the most challenging part of the campaign and needs to be put back into that. So Forrester, again, it's not me saying this, there's research being developed on this, because it's getting harder and harder to reach or have an impact or do major change. This is 3 airline apps. And Forrester themselves were reviewing this, and they said the issue is that the work looks, feels, and behaves too similar. The industry obsession for meeting every customer need and the want for ease and convenience has left little room for creative differentiation. And that's the problem we're finding ourselves at the moment. The level of creative differentiation between these apps is virtually minimal. Little logo. Can't even make your logo bigger, okay? Because they're all constrained by that back end. And so Forrester has said that customer experience, i.e. the impact of our creativity, of our design, we've commoditized the brand because we've homogenized the experience. And the unfortunate thing is the next 25 years we're going to see some great technology. And there's going to be new technology like artificial intelligence driving it, like virtual reality, augmented reality. And there's going to be a restriction on privacy, well, an increase in privacy and a restriction on data. So it's going to get harder and harder and harder if we follow the same path to get that commercial return, which is what's driving creativity, in my argument. So, what to do? What to do? What to do? Anyone have one of these? Some of you weren't even born when these were released. Sorry about that. I had a Trio. Loved my Trio. That's the one on the left for those of you who don't know. This is 10 years old. These are all 10 years ago. Our previous speaker were talking about what 20-year-olds were doing 40 years ago. I'll tell you what 20-year-olds were doing 40 years ago. They were enjoying free education thanks to a socialist government. But let's not go there, because I was one of them. This is the technology 10 years ago. And if I said to you that your prime creative output would be through one of these, you'd go, no, it won't. There is no way I'm designing for one of these. And now I can see you all experiencing your mobile phones, and I know you're experiencing your mobile phones because no one looks down in their lap and laughs unless they're using a mobile phone. And I can see you out there. So when I stand up in front of you and say, look, we have a great new creative technology coming at us like AR and VR, you will go, no, we won't, because this is the current state of AR and VR. And no one is going to wander around with one of these things on their heads. Just like 10 years ago, no one's going to wander around doing this. Certainly, they wouldn't be so rude as to sit in an audience and doing this. But society has changed, and I don't take that personally. It's just changes. And this is going to change. Now, this is not Apple's, got to point it somewhere. This is not Apple's, I want to be very clear. This is someone on the internet, the URL's down the bottom there, who said what may happen if, the design of the technology changes to this point where it becomes so ubiquitous that you carry it all the time with you, which is what's happened to the mobile phone and will happen to technology. It may come to pass within the next 10 years that we will all be wearing glasses. And just up here will be a little ad saying, buy Adobe Lightroom because I'm from Adobe. Or down here, vote now. And I can see up and down, whatever. But the technology will change to the point where there will be a desire to express this creativity. So what to do? Well, I'm going to tell you what we're doing at Adobe. We're taking our classic designers. Anyone want to raise their hand and say if they're an illustrator or uses Illustrator? Thank you very much, sir. Illustrator is Adobe's oldest piece of technology. It's 35 years old, again, older than some of the people in this room. And we're going to take that technology and leverage right over the top of design systems into computational and AI in order to deliver AR. And how are we going to do that? Well, we have technology that allows you to take that piece of old 1980s PostScript technology and wrap it around a 3D object and stick it in a background, in an image, and do all that computational work for you. Okay, this is what our software is doing for you at the moment. No one wants to be a 3D modeler. You need to see the sun sometimes. So we want you to be able to take your creativity, wrap around a 3D model, and we'll figure out the lighting and the surface detection and the correct dimensions for you. Okay? And of course, if you do that, you get a much better experience when you're trying to pitch to a customer. This is what the package is going to look like. And your customer, be that internal, your marketing manager, or external, will love it so much they'll go, well, if one's good, can I have two? And the answer is no, you can have three, okay? Because in order to do that, you will leverage AI and cloud technology to increase the content velocity. So you're not descending into production, you're still able to be creative in order to get that commercial return. And real soon now, your customer won't be content with that, and you'll want a far richer experience. And so what you want to do is take that model, and your customer wants to see, well, that's great, but I need to see it in situ. And you go, that's fine. Let me show you what it's going to look like as a guerrilla tactic in your local shopping centre. So this gives me a richer experience. It allows me to express some creativity. Very nascent. We're very nascent at the stage here. But it allows me to take the classic design principles and leveraging my AI, deliver an AR experience. And that fundamentally is summing up what we are trying to do, what we at Adobe are trying to do. And the reason for that is because of this. It allows us to bring everybody with us. It allows you to express your creativity in the future, but without that horrible descent into production that we went through before. When I learned Photoshop, I bought the Photoshop Wow book, and there are 6 pages in the Photoshop Wow book on how to make a drop shadow. And there are 10 pages in the Photoshop Wow book on how to deep etch hair. Okay? And I met designers who valued themselves, and they were creative, but they valued their worth on how well they could do a drop shadow. And then we put it in a menu item. And there are still people out there who are creative, but they're like it's swamped by production. Because what they're doing is they're cutting out things from a background and sticking it on another background. And that's what like 90% of Photoshop is. So we're using artificial intelligence to make it a menu item. It's select subject. You would not believe how many people will not use select subject because their value that they believe is tied up on how well they can select something. Let it go. AI will help you. We have it on these things now. Not because we've got Photoshop on the iPad, but because we can use the power of AI and cloud technology to do all that hard work for you. So that is what we're doing. AI at the service of classic design, skipping over design systems, because currently design systems are constraining you into a very narrow range of expression because they're at the mercy of personalization and data. I'll come back to that point. Is it worth it? That's what the title of this talk was. Is it worth it? Do we have to suffer through all this so that we can get more of these? Can we predicate creative success on commercial return? Well, you've got to put a chart in. So I put this chart in, and this is the same Forrester research. And Forrester's who said we have commoditized the brand, offering a solution in that you have to transfer some of your technology budget to your creative budget. And when you do that, they've got an ROI model which gives you 3 times the return for the same total budget. And they model out a 6-year time frame on how to do this, and you end up with an 18% return simply by moving your tech budget to your creative budget. Is it worth it inclusively? I mentioned I've been very, very privileged to work with the Centre for Inclusive Design. And Manisha, their CEO, is terrific. There are no motherhood statements here. If you design for greater inclusivity, you will make more money. And down the bottom there, I love this one, financial services, 1.5 billion additional revenue from the financial service industry, and by God, don't they need it, just in fees. All you got to do is just design for people to use your creative expressions, use your customer experience in a way that's inclusive, and you'll find out that actually you get better commercial return. So there's two out of 3. The third is emotionally. And we just did a report with SODA, the Society of DA, Digital Artists, about design systems yourself. Because we want to make sure that if you're going to talk to a CEO about how important design is to the bottom line, my very first slide, we need to do the research. And so we've been doing that. And we released this last year in October. And our XD product manager, Cisco Guzman, is quoted in there, and references that even though production has shifted from print, he's an old print guy, the paradigms and workflows are still the same. And we want to get back to that. Because SODA themselves say that design systems, quoting here, design systems are not canons that require governance. They're not controls that restrict creativity or panaceas that eradicate inefficiency. They should be communication systems, which designers, developers, contributors, and stakeholders, in fact, all of us, can collaboratively explore meaningful and inclusive design and creative experiences. So that's my argument for you today. And I would hope that I would leave you with these 3 things. To be massively creative first with new technology. Okay? Resist that descent into production because AI is going to take care of that. We don't have to go through what we did before. There won't be a drop shadow of AR, where technically it was possible so everybody does it. Okay? There won't be a hamburger menu with any luck. We'll jump over that and we'll move into creative systems. And do keep commercial in mind. It is worth it. It is a valid measure. And I think that's something that will allow us to be more creative and to drive it further. And if for no other reason, when people say, what do? And you say, well, I am a creative designer, they understand the value to society that we all are. Thank you very much.